Yo, what is up, guys? Shinobi here back again, and today we are reacting to Makai Satan's video of Bleach Rebirth of Souls versus Dragon Ball Sparking Zero combat and graphics comparison. We're taking a look at it, and just before we even get into this, we're not doing this one game is better than the other shit. We need to honestly dead that, because at the end of the day, this is probably the most anime games, like good fighting games, and as far as the anime space goes. As far as that, this is probably like we're kind of back in the golden age to a degree, because obviously these games were released with some bugs or some problems. But as far as games, we were in a drought before this, so we're not like, if y'all coming in here before we even hit the comment section and talking about one game being better than the other. You need to dead that shit. I mean, obviously people got their opinions and all that, but like honestly, I'm not trying to look at my comment section and see a bunch of people arguing about one game being better than the other as much as I'd want the interaction. I ain't trying to listen to all that, and I'm not trying to freaking moderate all that either, because I remember making a video talking about that before, and I had to moderate the fuck out of my damn chat because it was getting ridiculous down there. It was getting ridiculous down there. But either way, let's go ahead and get straight into this. Leave a like, leave a comment, all that stuff. Let me know if you got both games, you play one or the other. Which one's your favorite so far. Me personally, I've been playing a lot, if you couldn't tell already, of, Bleach Rebirth of Souls on the channel. But at the same time, I've been playing a lot of Sparking Zero every once in a while too, honestly. I feel like the game is pretty casual on my end versus, for Bleach Rebirth of Souls, where I kind of actually, it's the first time where I actually kind of went into the lab and went crazy on it. So we'll see, but let's go ahead and get straight into it.
With Bleach Rebirth the Souls out and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero out, I thought it would be great to make a comparison between the combat and the graphics of both games. I've seen several times that Bleach has been mentioned in the Sparking Zero discussions. I've also seen him mentioned in the Bleach Rebirth the Souls discussions. Whether it was claiming that the game was suddenly better than Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, or if Sparking Zero was better than Bleach Rebirth the Souls,
I will say this, and this isn't saying one is better than the other. I do enjoy Bleach's combat a lot more than Sparking Zero's. I don't know if that's because I've played so much Storm 4 that I'm just getting tired of the whole fast-paced thing, or it's because I've actually started playing other fighting games, like obviously Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle, and what's the other one I was playing recently? Let's see, Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle. There was like one other one that I was playing. But I think it's because I've gotten so used to playing like the fast-paced stuff that it kind of bores me. Like, for the longest period of time, before we got Dragon Ball Sparking Zero even, every game kind of copied the Storm formula. Fast-paced, kind of hyper-aggressive combat where you kind of just mash one button and call it a day. So to see that we got a Bleach game where they didn't decide to copy the Storm formula, even though it probably would have sold well, but, kind of went in the same direction. To see that we got a Bleach game, though, that's kind of like 3D fighter, kind of have to know a lot about winning neutral. You can actually like, there are obviously auto combos in this game, but you're more likely going to be trying to go for the advanced combos. It's something fresh as far as gameplay wise. Other than that, if we're talking the game itself, Storm 4 still to this day is one of my favorite games of all time. But I think it's because of the fact that we got something fresh and new as far as the gameplay and how the game plays in general, that I enjoy, this combat over Sparking Zero's as far as that. Not saying that Sparking Zero ain't fun, because holy crap, I've been having a hell of a lot of fun with it, especially playing with friends or family that I bring over. But by just playing by myself, I enjoy, playing with, Bleach Rebirth the Souls a lot more. But that's just me.
I figured it would make perfect sense to compare the two. Heck, even previously, I had a debate with someone in reference to Bleach versus Sparking Zero. So now I'm back to compare the combat and the graphics of both games. This video is simply me doing just that. We're gonna look at the combat, speak about that, and look at the graphics and speak about that. First up, I went ahead and booted up Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and I played a few matches online.
There's one thing I will say about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and Bleach, is with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, you got a lot more escape options. I will give them that. But at the same time, it's also a bad thing because then you get matches sometimes where you're kind of just like teleporting behind each other the whole entire time. Though, once again, this doesn't make the game bad. It's how Dragon Ball is. We see it in the anime all the time, and this game is literally just supposed to be us reliving the Dragon Ball fights that we see in the anime. So I'm not denting it for being a bad thing. But if we're talking from a game standpoint, not like, the intentions behind it. We're talking from a fighting game standpoint. I feel like I don't know how they've balanced it now, but I feel like there was way too many escape options when it comes to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, making it to where you don't really gotta care about neutral too much. You really don't. Because obviously you have the Sonic Sway, which has always been a thing. Then you got the fact that you can super counter, which is also a thing. And there's one more other counter that for some reason is just blanking out of my head, but it's where you flick the stick upward. Or no, is it the one where you hold it? It's been a minute. I'm gonna be real, it's been a minute. But there's like 3 different counters in the game that you can use, and before it used to be where you could just go back and forth, back and forth. I think they sped it up a little bit to where not every single time we'll get, or it's harder to get. But there's like way too many escape options versus where Bleach, you only got like 2 escape options to be getting mixed up. 2. And that's A, the reverse gauge, which, you can't use all the time. And B, if you perform a perfect flash step when your opponent attacks you. Outside of that, there's not really any other escape options. So you gotta be a lot more careful and neutral in, Bleach Rebirth the Souls versus, if you go in Sparking Zero, you do have a lot of escape options. Though, once again, I haven't played online competitively, if there is a still competitive thing going on with this game, in a long time. So, maybe I'm wrong and maybe they've balanced that kind of thing, because I know that was a big thing outside of obviously the androids and what was going on with them flying up and down. One big thing was that the super counters always kept going on for a long period of time. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that's also another thing I kind of like about Bleach Rebirth the Souls, once again, is you got to be a lot more careful or intentional about how you approach neutral, because once you get into it, you're in it. Either you're getting mixed or you're getting punished. So, or you're the one punishing your opponent if they make a mistake. You gotta be a lot more tactical, in my opinion. Not saying you can't be tactical in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, but you got a lot more. Like if you go into a match in Sparking Zero, that you got 3 different escape options you can land. So, just a little bit of a comparison there. Game looks beautiful though. I will give it shit. Game looks fucking beautiful.
Controls for the game feels more fluid and free. Combat is faster, feels more responsive. I press something on the control pad, it happens. I do a combo, it comes out fast. The combat in Sparking Zero, for the most part, is very easy to get into. Graphically, Sparking Zero looks closely to what Dragon Ball looks like. And thanks to the Unreal Engine, the game overall looks great. However, in terms of how the game plays, I gotta be honest with you. Matches, in my opinion, take too fast. One mistake and it's over for you. Half your health could be gone just with one combo, or depending on what character is being used. Somebody uses a top tier character, suddenly it's all over. The game, in my opinion, punishes you and doesn't give you a chance to recover when you make small mistakes. Mechanics are too easy to employ, and due to this, advanced mechanics are often seen online despite the game being out for less than 6 months. As an example, I have not played this game or practiced since the update in them changing the super mechanics and how it's employed, and yet in my matches with this guy, I was able to do it a few times. To me, that's unacceptable. If this was BT3, I would have never got the super counter off, aka the Z counter, because it would have been that much harder. And I think that's what it goes down to with Sparking Zero. The mechanics, it's just way too easy. But from a graphical standpoint, this game is like one of the best. As such, I booted up Bleach Rebirth the Souls and I ran a few matches. This is what it looks like.
So boring. I will show you the truth. Watch closely.
this Shinji's getting cooked. God damn. You know what's crazy? It's usually Shinji are a lot more aggressive when they play online. This guy's playing hella defensive. Though again, actually no, the one Shinji I did play against, he was spamming counter like crazy. At least this guy ain't doing that. But you can see, like, as I was talking about before, you gotta be a lot more careful in neutral. You can't just rush in. See, what's with the... Okay. I gotta ask this, Shinji players. Bro, why do you spam that counter so much, bro? Especially not knowing if your opponent's gonna attack or not. The counters in this game... Like, I feel like some people are coming from other games where you can kind of just throw out the counter, like, willy-nilly. And then think you could do that in a game like this. Why do y'all throw out the counter like that just so willy-nilly? That's like a free grab. I was having somebody in my... Like, I literally just made a video literally a couple of days ago where somebody was doing the exact same thing. Like, they were just throwing the counter out like it was crazy. I don't know if they think the counter can counter a grab or something like that, but it can't. I don't know if they've known that or not. But, like, why? Why would you do that? And this is what I gotta say. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier, where I say you gotta be a lot more careful in neutral. You cannot be just throwing stuff out. You gotta be a lot. You gotta know your character's distance. Like, what is their range? What is your opponent's range? What moves do you got that can beat your opponent's moves? That kind of thing. Like, you gotta be careful in neutral. You can't be just throwing out shit. You cannot just be throwing out shit like that. Like, I don't know why people do that. I don't know. And especially against Ukiura of all people. That guy got hella range.
Now, I've been playing since the game had launched on the 20th/21st, and I can say this right now. The controls in comparison are more limited. The gameplay is more grounded, but it is more restrictive. Similar to Sparking Zero, yes, you use characters from the series, but in a sense, they do feel more restrictive compared to how you would expect Bleach characters to play. You would think they would be in comparison to Dragon Ball characters of feeling more fluid and free. Characters,
That is true.
however, do
That
play
is definitely
different.
true, because you see it all the time in the Bleach series. They be flash stepping everywhere. They be moving all around. They're not usually slow moving like this. So I definitely agree with him on the fact that it's an interesting choice that the combat is a lot slower. And honestly, I wouldn't mind if they sped it up a little bit. But at the same time, they'd have to take, keep in mind the balancing and whatnot. But I could see, I could definitely agree with that. Because I know there were a lot of people that were complaining or talking about, Bleach Rebirth of Souls and how it's a slower kind of combat. And once again, I don't mind it too much because I'm so used to playing Storm Forward that honestly playing something different for me is actually refreshing. I actually got think about what I'm going to do before I do it. What's my opponent, how are they going to react, that kind of thing. It's like a lot of mind games, but at the same time, I can understand the people who come from games like Storm Forward, obviously the not Tenkaichi, but the Dragon Ball, Sparking Zero side, or the Demon Slayer, Himikami Chronicles games. I can understand why, so it makes sense.
And involve using different playstyles to secure the win. One character might be more of a rush in an attack, while another character might make use of a mechanic to secure the win. The goal for Bleach is to get the Konpaku down, versus Sparking is simply get the health down. You have to go about the game in a different way. You can't simply just rush in because it's not certain victory if you do so. Combat for the game revolves around knowing the strengths of the characters and the weaknesses of them and playing to that. Knowing this, coupled with the mechanics, can put you in a position that you could win. Putting recency bias aside, I do think Bleach Rebirth of Souls looks great, but I do think some of the issues such as the online lagging, or even in some cases like input delay. On launch, Sparking Zero couldn't do local play, and it was only hyperbolic time chamber. It says something about the game basically too much going on. Bleach could run on all maps co-op, so it's like, while it had some of those issues, I gotta be fair, Bleach is kind of doing better in the co-op department compared to Sparking Zero. However, Sparking does run on Unreal Engine, and I think when you optimize that, it just tends to run better than games put in other engines. I don't know what engine Bleach Rebirth of Souls is running in. Now,
what engine are they putting Bleach? They never did speak about that. Or they're not using Unreal Engine 5. We can see that. They're definitely not using Unreal Engine 5. What engine are they using for it? I gotta look that up. What engine are they using for Bleach Rebirth of Souls? What engine are they using for this game? What game is this? It's not using Unreal. I don't think anybody. Does anybody know what? Yeah, for anybody in the comments, does anybody know what engine this game was made on? Does anybody know? Let me see this. What game was this made on? Well, let me see. I know. Sorry about this, by the way. This is definitely. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think anybody knows what engine it runs on. That's got to be a question we got to ask. Because I know a lot of games are made on, Unreal Engine 5 these days. But that's
Now,
interesting
in
that we
terms
don't
of
know.
Sparking Zero Online, as mentioned,
Probably
it
Unity?
runs better than Bleach Rebirth the Souls Online. While co-op, I give it to Bleach. Online, I gotta give it to Sparking. I've had
Oh
more
yeah, most
matches where it
definitely.
wasn't lagging crazy, and if it was, I was still.
One thing I'll give the Sparking is I don't think I've had a match where it lagged. I don't think I fought any lag warriors. I fought lag warriors, and how I got videos on that. I fought lag warriors on Bleach Rebirth the Souls, and I've won those matches because they be trying to abuse their Wi-Fi on McDonald's and Wendy's, bro. But definitely as far as the online right now, it definitely goes to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero right now. We need, and I'm pretty sure. Am I correct on this or am I not? But doesn't Dragon Ball Sparking Zero have rollback netcode, or am I wrong on that? I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that they do. Let me know, because I think they got rollback.
Able to do stuff. It was only smaller degrees of matches where it was very bad. However, the combat for Bleach, in my opinion, is more forgiving. It's better. It allows you to come back in a battle even when you think you are at a huge disadvantage. This, in my opinion, is thanks to the Konpaku system. This, in my opinion, allows for matches to be more enjoyable. Mechanics are simple, but it doesn't mean that everyone has perfect execution for all the mechanics in the game. Advanced tech in this game exists, as well as knowing the character well, and also there's this thing called reading the opponent and responding accordingly.
Yeah, no, one thing with Bleach Rebirth of Souls is the game, it takes longer to take out your opponent than it does in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So you kind of have to get in your opponent's head a little bit. Like, once again, going back to what I was talking about before, it's like, you gotta know your character first and foremost. Then you gotta know the advanced mechanics. So you know how to tech grabs. You gotta know how to do the flash step. You gotta know your character's combos. What they can do, what they can't do. How they work in neutral. And then after that, when you're fighting your opponent, you gotta not only know your own character, but you gotta know how your opponent's character works. So there's that. You gotta know their strengths and weaknesses to a degree. And then after that, you gotta know how your opponent's playing. Not like, okay, are they mad aggressive? So then you punish them with grabs whenever they leave themselves wide open. Or are they passive? Do you gotta play a lot more careful because they'll react to you a lot better. There's a lot more that goes into it, and a lot more that you'll have to think about versus in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, where your whole thing is, okay, rush my opponent down, and then hopefully I counter better than them. The only thing that I can give to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero as far as its unique combat is, okay, am I gonna go for the high or low mix-up? Am I gonna start out with, that's like my mind games. Like, when I think in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, I'm thinking with mind games. Okay, am I gonna rush them down by going straight for the Dragon Rush, or am I gonna try and approach them straight up? Or I'm gonna go and go for the low combo a couple of times first, so I can bait my opponent to think I'm gonna go for the low, but this time I'm gonna go for a high. That's as close as it really gets. But otherwise, it's kind of just mash one or two buttons and call it a day, and rush your opponent down. Once again, it's not the Naruto Storm formula, but it is the Naruto Storm formula. Only difference is Naruto Storm, the only out you have is your supports, if you have supports that can get you out of a mix, or your substitutions. And even then, there's some pretty crazy stuff in that game. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen Storm Connections videos when it comes to the online, and I've seen it where people literally have teams built around just the supports. They don't even use the main character, which is actually insanity, because in Storm 4, there's no way in hell you could get away with just using supports and winning a game. But it is what it is.
Personally think Sparking Zero runs way too fast for you to do any true reading of the opponents. More so, someone just goes in and they spam themselves to victory. If I had to choose which does graphics better, I'm voting Sparking Zero. In
Oh,
terms
yeah.
of combat, I would vote Bleach Rebirth Souls. Sparking outdoes Bleach graphically due to Unreal Engine, and the game runs more stable after the patches. In terms of combat, I think Sparking Zero combat is too fast and it doesn't allow for enjoyment of the game. You can get done a match within like 60 seconds versus in Bleach is gonna take longer. There is too much resource management in Sparking Zero on top of the game matches ending too fast in my opinion.
Okay, so he's definitely right about the fact that there is too much resources, and the reason why is because the game's. So you got all these resources you gotta manage. You gotta manage your ki. You gotta manage your, your points that you got to use for some certain moves and whatnot, right? So you got those two things that you gotta manage, which doesn't sound a lot compared to Bleach. But the problem is the game's too fast. You don't really get to kind of like, okay, where's my resource at? What can I do here? What can I do there? Because you're so busy just trying to mash your way to victory that you're not really even thinking about using your meter too much. The only time where that was really a thing that people cared about, and I don't even think people really thought about it too much, was when people were spamming after Image Strike with Vegito and some of the other characters. So they had to nerf that a little bit. But after that, it's like nobody really thinks about it. Hell, I can say that of all the games I've played in Sparking Zero, I've never really thought about my resources. I kind of just rush my opponent down. The only resource I care about in the game, I'm going to be real, is ki. It's the main thing. Ki management is about the only management you really got to worry about. And even then, sometimes you can't even manage that because your opponent's constantly rushing you down all the time. So you're mostly thinking about, okay, do I got a Sonic Sway here? Do I got a super counter here kind of thing. I'm not really even thinking about my ki management too much. Outside of Vanishing. Vanishing Wars might be the one time you'll think about it, because if you don't have enough to beat your opponent on the Vanish War, then they're going to beat you. But that's also a ki management thing. But yeah, no, I definitely agree that the game goes way too fast for the amount of stuff that you got to manage.
Overall, I think Sparking Zero, great idea, but I just don't think it's doing combat better than Bleach. Graphically, it's there. Give me your thoughts in the comment section. With that being said, I am Makai-san. What, yo? I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Yeah, no, great video. I feel like there's more he could have compared. I'm not gonna lie, but this is only combat and graphics, so Hey, I'd say I agree. Yeah, pretty much. I don't really have any much disagreement with what he said so far. I added in my own few takes here and there. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and Bleach do have some similarities, but at the same time, their combat is vastly different. So, it really depends on, like, what game you like more. Kind of depends on what you've played, I would say, beforehand, or if you like more fast-paced combat, kind of just rush down all the time versus, okay, slower, methodical kind of combat where you're like, okay, I gotta think about this, I gotta strategize around this. Because, Bleach heavily leans into the 3D fighter, kind of with some FGC mechanics, versus Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, where it's more rushdown heavy. And it does have some FGC mechanics in it, I will give it that, because obviously you have high or low mix-ups that you can go for, but you're not really thinking about them too much. But, hey, that's just my opinion. I want to know what you guys think. Once again, shout outs to Makai-san for making the video. I just want to give my opinion on it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Leave your comments, your thoughts down below, and yeah, that's it.